There's something interesting about the way we talk about debt. We often talk about inflation, we talk about interest rates, we talk about minimum monthly payments, we talk about principal amounts, and a whole bunch of other technical terms. However, very rarely do we talk about the impact that debt has on a person. Now, if you've been paying close attention, you'll know that debt is not something that lives in isolation. Debt does not exist on a spreadsheet somewhere for us to ignore. Debt is usually created in a moment. It's commonly associated with a particular feeling. And debt is perpetuated by the stories that we keep telling ourselves time and time again. So in this video, I want to talk about the psychological impact that debt might have on a person. Let's get to it. Most people think that debt is a mathematical problem, which in part it is. But I'd argue to say that it is also a deeply rooted identity issue, or a problem really. For example, when someone finances a car that really stretches them beyond what they realistically can afford, as opposed to viewing themselves as a person that has now gained or accumulated another liability, they rather see themselves as a new person, as a new being. The car represents progress. It means that they've now attained a particular status, and so too does the house, and the phone, and the watch, and everything else. But the reality is that your income at times does not quite support this new identity, and that's when debt quietly has to creep through the back door and bridge the gap between your realistic income and what it is that you're trying to portray in your lifestyle. When we buy things, we're not just buying objects. We're buying upgrades to our identity. And as I've said, sometimes our income cannot support our new identity. And so we make use of debt. And debt mostly covers the expenses associated with our new identity. I think largely there's also a neurological component that is associated with purchasing. Before that click, before the swipe, before anything happens, the anticipation of the purchase releases dopamine, and the sort of surge of excitement that you feel before that purchase is really what gives you the inclination to actually go ahead and make that purchase. A lot of the times, the systems that are in place reduce the amount of friction that it takes to go from click to basket to purchase. So in a world where it becomes ridiculously easy to make purchases, we really need to think about what we are doing when we are making use of debt instruments to buy things of no value or very little value. Now, debt, interestingly enough, creates avoidance. And avoidance in the short term eases our anxiety and really allows us to be able to live life as if though nothing's happened. But very rarely do people sit down and actually look at the total number. They don't look at the monthly repayment, they don't look at the terms of their loan, and they don't look at the total debt that they owe to various lenders. And this creates a sort of hum in the background that doesn't exactly leave us. When we go to bed at night, it's there. And when we wake up in the morning, it's there. It affects how we think. It affects how we negotiate, how we sleep. It affects how we speak to our partners. It affects how we speak to our children. It affects everything really in our lives. And so debt has this underlying impact on everyday people. And it creates this bigger gap between what the reality of our situations is and also where we find ourselves being in debt. At times, I know that it is scary for us to face the reality that we are in debt. But the only way that we can get out of debt is to actually face the music and really draw up the numbers and look at the amount that we owe. From there, we can start working on a plan to reduce the debt that we have. And I'll introduce you to two methods when it comes to eradicating debt completely. So, one of the ways is known as the debt snowball. And here, once you've compiled the list of all of the debt that you have, you try and identify the debt item that has the lowest interest rate. And once you've done so, you'll attack that aggressively, making sure that you contribute a particular amount of money every month until such time that it's paid off. Now, here, usually the approach is to gain a bit of momentum, to gain some confidence, and once that debt has completely been settled, you'll take the funds from that debt and you'll allocate it to the next highest interest rate. And so you'll move on, creating a bit of a debt snowball. The second method that you could use is known as the Avalanche Method. So this would be where you target the loan or the debt that you have with the highest interest rate first. In the long run, this will obviously allow you to save a lot more money, but you'll target the one with the highest interest rate first, and from there you'll tackle the lower amounts as they decrease. And by the end of it all, you'll essentially save a lot more money because you'll be saving on the interest payments that you were going to make on the loan, seeing that you've settled that big one first. Let's continue. Another aspect of debt that we don't often talk about is the shame that it carries. Now, a lot of people feel embarrassed by it. A lot of people feel as if though they've made mistakes. They feel that they are behind in life as a result of the fact that they are in debt. So this is something very important to consider, that at times, because of the shame that we feel, it can be very isolating. And we avoid conversations about debt altogether. But the important thing is that once we start facing the reality that we are in debt, we can actually start removing some of the embarrassment and shame that we feel, start reaching out to people that are in positions to help us. And through the process of eradicating our debt step by step, we are getting to a place where we can become debt-free and start building towards a financial future that looks a bit more promising than the bleak one we currently face. So that's the aspect of shame. And it is only through conversation, it is only through actually tackling the problem that you're able to get over this hurdle in your financial journey. I've said in a previous video that wealth is sort of storing food away in the refrigerator to use on another day when you're hungry or when you need it most. So it gives you optionality. It gives you the ability to set aside money for things that you might need for your future self. So if you think about it, debt is quite the opposite. Debt is borrowing from your future self, taking money that you otherwise could have used in the future and having to struggle your whole life through trying to work to get more money to cover the debt. So if you are serious about your financial journey and getting to a place where you are financially free, you need to start tackling your debt. And I'm not saying this from a position of authority. Tackling your debt is a really, really difficult thing. But it is important that you identify that if you don't tackle it now, you are basically robbing yourself in the future. You are taking away the options that you might have. You take away the ability to retire, maybe even earlier than normal. You are also taking away the options that you give to your children and loved ones at a later point. So think about that really long and hard, that if you are struggling with debt, it is something that you are going to have to face some or other time. Before I end this video, if there's one takeaway, I want you to really think about debt as being an identity problem. Once you identify that you've got an identity problem, you can start taking corrective action to change your behaviors to align with your financial goals. If your ultimate goal is to get out of debt, if you are struggling with debt, I hope this video has helped just to give a brief explanation about the impact that it can have at times, and also maybe some action steps and methods that you can use in order to get rid of debt completely. Once you've eradicated your debt, you can start building towards, I guess, a better future. I hope this video has helped, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll definitely see you in the next one. Cheers for now.